Hey everyone, checking in 5 to 1 on Saturday, March 28th. Of course, hope you and your families are safe and healthy during this coronavirus, this pandemic. It's been awful, horrific, I know. Um, Over it, ready to get back to work. And I know that with a lot of these sentencings getting delayed and all of our client self surrender have been delayed, eventually it's going to happen. So if you're totally over Netflix or Disney Plus, as the case in our home, my kids have watched enough Disney Plus. My daughter's 5.5. She's watched enough for the next 5 years. And my little boy has watched a little bit too much TV too. But this is what it takes. We're getting through it. So if you want to get off of Netflix and you want to continue to prepare as much as you may not want to, we're happy to help. A little overview of this video, I'm going to talk about criminal restitution. Should you pay money at your sentencing? Will it help you get a shorter sentence? And further, even if you can make a payment, is it worth a shorter? Is it even worth the shorter sentence? We're going to walk through that a little bit. I'm going to share some examples. For example, I am about to make my final restitution payment. Can you believe it? $535,000. Judge Stephen Wilson hit me with February 2008 when I was sentenced. 535,000 accruing at 1.66% interest. I think in retrospect, my lawyers could have asked that interest not accrue. They didn't, so it's been accruing at 1.66% all that time. Let's talk a little bit about my experience with criminal restitution, and of course, is it something that if you're going to have, should you pay it? And that's really who this video is for. A white-collar defendant, or any defendant really, that may have court-ordered restitution and is debating, should you pay anything? You know, 3,000, 5,000, 100,000, which is what I paid in my case. I've had clients pay upwards of tens of millions of dollars at sentencing. So keep that in mind. Look, I think there is an opportunity to get a significantly shorter prison term if you make a significant payment, in part because defendants will always say, I'm sorry. If they pled guilty, I'm sorry. I want to make my victims whole if there are victims. And that's what judges are used to hearing. And that's what you should say. That's exactly what you should articulate. But you should also understand that you can separate yourself a little bit if you're willing to make a payment. But again, is it worth it? So the next steps after this video, if you owe criminal restitution, is to make an assessment, and you'll know what to do after I get into the content of the video. You have to assess, can I come up with money? Is it worth it? And how much does it really change the game? So part of the reason I was so eager to make a payment at sentencing was because I was scared to death to go to jail. So the only thing I knew about federal prison when I was a white-collar defendant was what I'd seen sensationalized on television. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get beat up. I'm going to get raped. I'm going to get stabbed. I had people texting me like, you got to knock 3 times when you're done eating. I'm like, why do you knock 3 times? What if I knock twice? Is 3 times the number? What if it's 4? What if I do it once? What if I don't do it at all? Am I going to be that guy that goes? So all this nonsense. I'm like, my God, I got to do whatever I can to stay out of jail. Whatever I can do to stay out of prison. How much money I got to pay? Great, I'll pay it. So for 3.5 years before I went to prison, I worked selling real estate at Sotheby's Real Estate in Calabasas. And literally, every deal I closed after I paid the lawyers, I would set aside a really good, 20%. And I'd say, okay, that's going to go into the restitution fund. And initially, looking like my restitution was going to be $9 million. It turned out to be about, like I said, $535,000. And my lawyers kept saying to me, come up with money, come up with money. It can keep you out of jail or get a shorter term. I'm like, of course, I'm waiting. I'm trying to raise money. We got sentencing delayed a couple of times for some kind of creative things that we did, which enabled me to work and save more money. So at sentencing, the government asked for 24 months in prison. And a couple of weeks before that, they were going to ask for 41 months, but my character reference letters were very compelling. I'm working on a character reference letter video. And letters were compelling, and I think the government had a better understanding of my conduct. The former AUSA in the case, David Willingham, who's now a defense attorney in downtown, I've done some work with David, he really came to stepped up for me. So the government asked for 24 months. At my sentencing, all said and done, the judge gave me 18 months. Now, I have no doubt that the $100,000 payment I made impacted Judge Wilson. The question was, in retrospect, was it worth it? Was it worth it? Would it be worth it for you to come up with so much of the cash that you have left to get out of jail 6 months, 9 months, or a year early, if it even helps you at all? I mean, I know of defendants who have paid $10 or $11 million and given every penny back, and they still get a guideline sentence. And it's like, it wasn't a forfeiture. They weren't required to pay it. They were going to hit with the restitution. They'd have made payments in prison and the payments when they come home. Now, the Department of Justice is going to be on you, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. They're just not going to let you slide. Guys love in prison every day. Guys would say, well, I'll settle my restitution at 5 cents on the dollar. I don't know of that ever happening. I've never seen it happen. If you owe a debt, they're going to work to collect. And I have evidence of this because I'll read you this letter that I got every year while I was on probation, signed by the Financial Litigation Unit. So if you owe, you can expect them to try to collect, as I learned from that Washington Post article that ran last year, which I'll get into in this video. If any of you, I'm not going to get into a great deal on my story. If any of you, of course, want to learn more about my story, bad choices that led me to prison and what I learned from there, you can, of course, grab lessons from prison. If you'd like to have a conversation with us, I'll put up my phone number. Feel free to call or text me. Happy to offer you some advice. Now, getting back to this restitution issue, I know the $100,000. Am I looking all around in this video? I'm actually working from home. I fear like at any moment my daughter Alyssa is going to come like running in here. It's inevitable, so I'm sorry if I'm distracted. I paid the $100,000. I know it probably got me 6 months out of jail. And when I got to jail, I remember thinking, it's pretty easy. Not what I thought. This is not Shawshank Redemption. This is not Cool Hand Luke. And with halfway house and good time and just how easy and how productive I was in prison, I just put up a blog called How to Be Productive in Prison. I'll put up a link to that. I remember a few months into my prison term thinking, damn, I could use that $100,000. Damn, I could use that when I go home to start my business and launch my life. Now, keep in mind, I'm coming from the perspective of a prisoner and now as a federal prison consultant. I understand the priority of victims and wanting to compensate them, or not even compensate them, repay them. I understand it. And I've mentioned what I have just said in some lectures, and even some ethics professors are like, well, is that okay that you said that? I said, well, I'm telling the truth. How was I ever going to repay my victims in full if I didn't have money to build a business? If I didn't have an opportunity to grow something? I couldn't do that with nothing. I came home with nothing. And other than credit card, I share the story of, I can't find my wallet. I think my daughter took my wallet. I joke that I came home, all I did was use my Citi card with 24% interest until my probation officer said, stop using your credit card, you have too much debt. So that money would have helped me, and it would have put me in a better position to grow my business and pay the victims back. I guess that's a rationalization. My point is, when I was in prison, I regretted paying the $100,000. I would have happily done a few extra months in prison. And that's what I want you to think about, because I frequently get those calls from defendants who are like, hey, my guideline range is 24 to 30 months. I think I'm going to do the drug program. My lawyer's telling me to come up with 50. I'm like, can you get the 50? Like, yeah, it'd be kind of tough, and I kind of need it, and I don't want to burden my family with sending me a few $100 a month in prison for commissary, and what do I do? And I'm not going to tell you how to spend your money. I'm telling you that eventually you're going to want to try to pay it off if you can. The government's going to be on you to make payments and get it. So there is some value in making payment, and there is some value in serving a shorter time in prison. But you also have to consider the flip side of that. Is the 50 worth serving a few months less in prison, if it even shortens your sentence at all? Okay, so these are just things that you have to consider as defendants, but just don't automatically think, wow, every penny that I have, I'm going to give to the court, and the judge is going to give me a shorter sentence. There's no guarantee of that. Further, it could leave you like totally broke, and that can be really frustrating as well. Now, the flip side is, if you're making big money, and we have clients who still make tens of millions of dollars a year while they're dealing with their case, and if they owe restitution, of course the government is going to expect a significant payment. Or if there is no restitution, you can expect a big fine that's coming. We have a client that's worth tens of millions of dollars. The government's going to hit him with the maximum fine under his plea at $250, and it's sort of all fine because it's a rounding error for our clients. So I'm not really talking about those. That's kind of an anomaly. Someone that has that type of wealth that could just write a check and it's nothing. I'm talking about like you and me. When I was the defendant making money as a real estate agent, but the money went to the lawyers and my reputation is destroyed, I'm like, 50, 100 grand's a lot of cash. It's still a lot of money. Do you part with all of it with the idea you're going to get a shorter sentence? I'm not so sure, but I want you to think through those things because when I was on the inside, I had some regrets. As bad as that sounds, right? I mean, it's not great that I'm saying I wish I didn't pay the victims back, but I truly believe that money would have helped me pay them back sooner, which leads to what happened on the other side. So when I came home from prison, I was on federal probation for 3 years. I was finished in August of 12. And then, like, over the last 10 years, I would get hundreds of these. Yes, what is it?
Mama, do I have to homework?
Do you have to do homework? Only if you want to get educated and do well in school and be successful in life. That's the only reason you have to do it. If that doesn't interest you, don't do the homework. Okay, so you begin to get letters like this. Dear Mr. Paperny, this is when I was done with prison. This office has been given the responsibility for collection of the monetary obligations imposed by a judgment entered on February 25th, 2008 against you in the United States District Court. This is now due. They want the cash. This is now due and owing a total of $224,382. So I actually got this February 12th, 2016. Can I put that up there? So I came home in August of 12. So between the $100,000 I paid at sentencing, paid it down to $435. On probation, I made significant payments on restitution. A lot of the corporate lectures I did, like FBI, they would make a payment. NYU, KPMG, Wells Fargo, I would always allocate a really good portion of my honorarium to my restitution. And I began to grow the consulting practice, and there were some months I'd send $10,000, $15,000 in restitution. So the date I got this letter, I'd have paid it down to $224,000 or something like that. And then when I got the letter, they basically said, hey, how are you doing financially? Are things improving? And then, okay.
Watch tea, that's
okay.
right.
We can't watch any more Mickey Mouse Club today. Everyone, come on in. I'll introduce everyone to my little man, Jason. We're actually doing a video right now. We're doing a video. This is Jason Sachs Paperny. Would you like to say hello? What are you doing? What are you doing? Okay, all right. This is the quarantine. This is what happens when you work from home. If you go to the office, they're going to arrest you. I totally get it. I'm respecting the quarantine. I'm not leaving the home. But we have to work. We have to prepare for sentencing, and we got to prepare for prison, and we can't waste time. Okay, all right, thank you. It's actually 1:07. He should be in bed. Okay, we're going to come back to this in a second. We're not stopping. Okay, can I have my hat, please?
No.
Okay. 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 So what happens is every year or two, they're going to want to know how well you're doing financially. Because when you come home, your probation officer is going to establish, I'm sorry, we got to get through this. When you come home, your probation officer is going to establish, go to mommy. Your probation officer is going to establish a payment, $50, $100, $200, $300 a month. And that will change in part based on what you're reporting on probation. Don't lie about what you earn on probation. They'll send you back to prison. I've gotten those calls too. So then once you're off probation, they're going to send you a letter, kind of like I got. They said, hey, you're off probation, but you have a continuing debt. Keep sending money. And then they're going to want a new detailed financial worksheet. Basically, this financial statement, they say, if you lie to us, we're going to send you back to prison under penalty of perjury. So, of course, if you choose to fill it out, do it honestly and correctly. Some clients actually just throw it in the round file and say, unless I get served with a subpoena, I'm not going to fill this out. They immediately throw it. It's all right. It's the way it goes. They immediately throw it in the trash. And then sometimes they'll forget about you for a year or two. I've had clients where they'll get this. Now, I always filled it out just because I wanted to be transparent. My life, everything is online. I don't want to hide anything. So I always filled it out and sent it back. A lot of clients wouldn't. And some clients that wouldn't, they wouldn't hear from the Department of Justice for 2 or 3 years. They move on to other cases. They can't forget about you. Eventually, they're going to come back. So I've had some clients say, 5 years before I get another letter like this. And I just continue to send in a couple $100 a month. You've got to make that determination. My point is, if you fill it out correctly. So in my case, I paid it from $100,000 in sentencing down to $435. Then it was $224,000 in August of 16. Then continue to make payments even off probation, $1,000, $2,000 a month. Then last year, and this is important for all of you who want to get in the spotlight, who want to speak, who are making money, who have some press, knowing that the government's always watching. Big Brother's always watching. So last year, our company had this really great cover article in the Washington Post that went viral with 25 million views. And then within a day, literally, of that Washington Post article, I received a subpoena from the Department of Justice. And the FLU, they call it, the Financial Litigation Unit. And they served me with a subpoena for the balance of my restitution. And essentially, they wanted payment in full at once. So a very good friend of mine, a lawyer in Los Angeles named Mark Worksman, I called Mark. I said, hey, call the flu and let them know what's going on. I've been on probation 6 years. I send at least $1,000, $2,000 a month. I paid my restitution from $535 down to a couple $100,000 or $190,000. I'm really on my way. Help me out here. I said, sure, I'm happy to make a call. So he called, and essentially they said, yeah, we didn't like the Post article. We think your guy's making big money. We think that he can pay more, and we want it now. And they were open to discussions about what I would pay or how quickly I could pay the balance off. And they acknowledged that I'd continue to make sizable payments and that I've never missed, and I was transparent with my financial. But they didn't have to serve me with a subpoena. But they don't necessarily care for what I do, nor do they believe that people out of prison are really worthy of a second chance or can earn a second chance. They didn't like that I'm helping people like you. Doctors, lawyers, businessmen, CEOs who made bad choices, who want to prepare. So let's move past that. So then, following the Washington Post, there was like a whole new slew of media, from Dr. Phil to Fox to CNN to CBS, and it went crazy, and they were trolling me. And the more press I had, the angrier they got. And essentially they said, here's the deal. We want the $190,000 plus $60,000 in interest and penalties payable immediately. Or else we're going to bring him back in front of Judge Wilson, who's my sentencing judge. And of course, if he lies, we're going to indict him. And it's just so crazy the way they speak. I've been home for 10 years. I've trained FBI agents. I've had 1,000 clients. I've traveled the whole country lecturing. I do pretrial training in Los Angeles, and they just view me as a criminal. They do not view me or who I've become. They will not view you, who you can become. They're just going to see you as someone who broke the law. That's how they treated me. Fine, it's all good. So there was very little negotiation. At the end, they agreed and said, we will knock off $20,000 essentially of the penalty. So the $190,000 I owed, I ended up paying $230,000. Actually, it was $210,000 they got, and then we agreed to do $20,000 over 1 year. So this payment from the U.S. Attorney's Office represents Clerk, U.S. District Court, $1,804 due April 1st. This will be the last payment. I will be done with restitution. It is crazy to think that $535,000 over a decade, how I came home in that economy, could be paid off, but it's kind of the slow and steady, the deliberateness. You work, you send every month, you stick with it, you don't forget, you don't skip months. And I'm proudly able to say that all the victims in our case, well, actually, all the victims in my case were paid back at sentencing. My money went to the U.S. Treasury. So if you see our $22 trillion debt go down by $1,804 a month, you could thank me. That's where my money went, to the U.S. Treasury. So let me close with how I opened. If you owe money, there is value in getting it paid off, because you're going to have Big Brother on your back for a long, long time seeking to collect. And if your goal is to get the shortest sentence and you've got the resources, there could absolutely be some value in making a significant restitution payment at sentencing. In my case, is off-putting, or as it may sound, I wish I had the cash. I wish I had it when I came home. It would have helped me build a business. And that's what I want you to think about. So that's kind of how I'm going to wrap up this video, with the kind of the craziness from home during this coronavirus. And I'm over it, but we got to get back to work. And you got to think about, what can you do if you want to get the shortest sentence? How far do you want to go? Do you want to use every means necessary, potentially parting with money you could use down the road, knowing that even if it helps you get 3 or 6 months off, is it worth it for $50,000, $100,000, $200,000? These are things I want you to think through, and it's the reason I wanted to film this video, because this morning I got this, and I said, my last restitution payment, I'm going to film a video and talk about it in hopes that it helps you as you decide what you should do inching towards sentencing. I'll stress it again, be really transparent. Never lie when you fill out these forms. So you are going to get this. I mean, it happens. You're going to get this. Okay. Do not lie when you fill out these forms. Okay. It is a no-no. You are already in the system. They're already looking at you differently. If you hide one penny, don't disclose something, a loan someone gave you 10 years ago that you forgot about, if you don't put it on there, they find out. They're the DOJ. Okay, so if you're going to fill it out correctly. I'll be back soon with more videos. Again, if you want a copy of Lessons from Prison, grab it. It's free. The only investment is your time. Thank you all so much. Hope you found value in the video. Again, I'm sorry for the craziness of my kids running in, trying to manage this lockdown in California. Bye-bye.